Welcome in, folks, to the Week 6 Waiver Wire Show. Join me as I discuss a lot of players that are going to help you throughout the season. Whether you're looking for a week buy, a fill-in, or a season-long player who could be a flex option for you. We have some players in here that could end up being league winners, in my opinion. So stay tuned as we get into these waivers. And remember, hit that subscribe button on the bottom corner, and we'll jump right into this. QBs for this week. Start off with Kirk Cousins, owned in 41% of sleeper leagues. Went 42 for 58 for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns this past week. He's got Carolina, Seattle, and Tampa Bay coming up over the next 3 weeks. Tampa Bay's who he just dropped 500 yards on. So Kirk Cousins could end up being a starter for you for the rest of the season if you're looking for quarterback help. Or he could be a fill-in for a bye week coming up, as most of you have some of these bigger end quarterbacks, especially with you got the Chiefs on bye, the Rams on bye, the Dolphins on bye, and Minnesota on bye this week. So a huge week for buys with some big name players out. Moving on, Daniel Jones, owned in 16% of leagues, went 23 for 34 this past week, 257 yards, 2 TDs, 11 carries, so he gives you that rushing upside, 38 yards. A little bit of a tougher slate over the next few weeks, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and Pitt. So you can grab them. Like I said, great for the rushing upside. I personally would rather have Kirk Cousins. Most of these players I'm talking about owned in less than 50% of sleeper leagues. So, well, actually, all of them are. So, there's a good chance they're available. So, go out and take a peek. Moving on to wide receivers. The first guy I'm going to talk about, keep an eye on this Davante Adams news over the next couple of days. Hopefully, it plays out pretty quick so we know where he's going to land. But I'm going to talk about Allen Lazard. Owned in 47% of leagues, had 10 targets for 4 receptions and 34 yards and a touchdown this past week. Big thing with Lazard is he is Aaron Rodgers. He seems to be Aaron Rodgers' primary red zone target, which is huge. He has 4 touchdowns on the year already. Tough slate coming up, Buffalo, Pitt, and New England. But being that primary red zone target means he's going to get a lot of high-value targets. So Lazard should be owned in all leagues. Don't go breaking the bank, like I said, though. If Davante Adams lands in New York, Lazard may become irrelevant. Moving on, we'll talk Jalen Tolbert. This could be one of those league winners I was telling you about. Jalen Tolbert's only owned in 17% of leagues. He had 10 targets, 7 receptions, 87 yards, and a touchdown this past week. Brandon Cooks is currently on the IR. If Jalen Tolbert continues to play like this, he may be the number 2 for the rest of the year. A number 2 in that offense could be huge. Could give you a solid flex option value for the rest of the season. He's got Detroit this week, bye next, and San Francisco the following week. But take a peek, see if Jalen Tolbert's there. Next guy, Juju Smith-Schuster. Tonight, 8 targets, 7 receptions for 130 yards. He's only owned in 6% of sleeper leagues. Juju Smith-Schuster is falling right back into the role he was in before he left Kansas City the first time. He's filling that Rashee Rice role, the same role that he filled when he previously played for Kansas City. And he's rolling right into this pretty similar targets to what Rashee Rice is getting. So this could be a common theme rest of the season, as most of you have probably heard by now, but Rashee Rice is more than likely missing the rest of the season unless something drastic happens in that procedure tomorrow where they find that it wasn't as serious as what they're expecting. So moving on to tight ends, we'll talk about Colby Parkinson. 39% of sleeper leagues, 13 targets this past week, 7 receptions for 52 yards, 20 targets over the past 2 weeks. Got to be careful with this one, though. Predictions is Cooper Kupp will be back after the bye, which is this week. They go on to play Vegas and Minnesota. But with Cooper Kupp coming back, he's going to fall back into being that primary target. So Kobe Parkinson might take a back seat. So you're not really getting much because they are on bye this week and the unknown of Cooper Kupp coming back into the lineup. But the next guy, Tyler Conklin, seems to be building that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. 9 targets, 6 receptions, 55 yards this past week, 23 targets over the past 3 weeks. Just like Allen Lazard, though, keep an eye on the Davante Adams news. If Davante Adams comes to the Jets, it's going to be the Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson show. So Conklin, Lazard, a lot of these guys are going to go minimal on the targets, and they're going to be dumping a lot of these targets to Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. Wilson had 22 targets this past week. That is absolutely insane. Obviously not a stat that's going to keep up no matter if Adams is there or not, but just insane amount of targets. But Conklin could be a good tight end for the rest of the season if Adams doesn't land in with the Jets. All right, so I'm going to get into the running backs. Start at the bottom for this one. Roschon Johnson, 31% of sleeper leagues, 10 carries, 25 yards, 2 TDs. He's got Jacksonville bye week and Washington over the next 3 weeks. So the big thing with Roschon Johnson, just like with Allen Lazard, Roschon's getting a lot of those high-quality carries. He's getting a lot of carries on the goal line. As you can see, 2 TDs this week, a touchdown the week before. DeAndre Swift starting to step it up. Don't get me wrong. I had him as a sell a couple weeks ago, and he's really he's doing now what I expected him to do when draft season was here. But Roschon's still getting a lot of those high quality carries. So if you're looking for a flex option to fill in for bye weeks, Roschon Johnson could be that guy. Ty Chandler, keep an eye on this. He's on bye this week. However, Aaron Jones is dealing with a hip injury. He's supposed to have an MRI. Let's see what that MRI says. If Aaron Jones is going to miss any amount of time, Ty Chandler's the guy. 36% of sleeper leagues, 14 carries this past week. A lot of them after Aaron Jones had already left the game. Only 30 yards, but he had 2 targets, 2 receptions for 9 yards. If he's getting the bulk of the carries and he's got a week to prepare with the first team offense, I think Ty Chandler is going to be a great back to own for the period that Aaron Jones is out. Obviously not season long if Aaron Jones comes back, but solid flex option while he's gone. Next name, Tyrone Tracy. I said it in a show a couple this past week, but this week was going to be the week we want all the Tyrone Tracy truthers were going to get their answer, and he gave it to them. 18 carries for 129 yards. Huge game for Tyrone Tracy. It's going to have the Giants rethinking their game plan going forward, and the split between him and Singletary, because Tracy looked good in that game. He's only owned in 34% of sleeper leagues. Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and Pitt over the next 3 weeks. So solid schedule. But look for Tyrone Tracy. Could be a good option going forward for the rest of the season. And last but not least, this is my number 1 pickup of the week. Not telling you to go dump your waivers on him because I don't know what the split's going to be, but Tank Bigsby, 31% of sleeper leagues, 13 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looked extremely explosive this past week. 1 reception for 28 yards. Plays Chicago, New England, and Green Bay over the next 3 weeks. Travis Etienne's dealing with a shoulder injury. Don't know the extent of it, how serious it is. Expect him to stay on as the lead back. Still had 7 receptions this past week, but Tank Bigsby could take over a bulk of the early down work if they're trying to conserve with Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby could be a huge play going forward. I had him last week on the waiver show, I believe, either the waiver or the stash. I can't remember off the top of my head, but grab him if you can. Don't dump your fab on him, but put a good bid on him. Try to grab him, and could be a league winner going forward. So that's what I got. So my QBs for this week: Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones. Running backs: Tank Bigsby, Tyrone Tracy, Ty Chandler, Roschon Johnson. Wide receivers: Allen Lazard, Jalen Tolbert, Juju Smith-Schuster. Tight ends: Colby Parkinson and Tyler Conklin. Remember, we're 5 weeks out from most leagues' trade deadlines, so teams are going to start forming what they're going to look like for the rest of the year. Get these waiver picks in. These players could be huge going forward for your team as bye weeks continue. Huge with all these injuries happening right now. Seems like every week we're dealing with another injury. So grab them while you can. It's going to thin out. And remember, hit that subscribe button in the bottom. Comment. Let me know what you think of the players I picked today. Let me know if I missed anybody. And we will catch you guys tomorrow on the weekly. I believe it's not Start Sit. What do we got tomorrow? Buy low, sell high tomorrow. So we're going to talk some trades, players you should try to jump into, as well as players you should try to sell out of. You guys have a good one, and we will catch you guys tomorrow.